today we look at the birth of an earlier political movement known by 3 short letters. This youth-led movement changed the very language of politics, and its impact is still being felt today. It might sound like a description of Occupy Wall Street, but over 2 generations ago, growing out of a very similar demand for change, emerged SDS, or the Students for a Democratic Society. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the signing of the 1962 Port Huron Statement, the founding document of SDS. The statement advocated for participatory democracy and helped launch the student movement of the 1960s.
We're joined by Tom Hayden, one of the founders of SDS, principal author of the Port Huron Statement. Tom Hayden has been deeply involved in social movements for the past half a century. He was a freedom rider in the Deep South, helped create a national poor people's campaign for jobs and empowerment in the early 60s, helped lead the anti-Vietnam War movement, and was indicted with 7 others after the 1968 Chicago Democratic Convention. I wanted to go to a clip of you speaking in the early 60s. You're talking about Bob Moses being arrested for registering African-American voters. Bob Moses was the field secretary for SNCC, for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and director of SNCC's Mississippi Project.
Middle of August, when Bob Moses was arrested on his way back from Liberty, which is the county seat, ironically enough, of Mint County. He was stopped with several Negroes who had just attempted to register unsuccessfully, and he was arrested by the officer, by the marshal, for disturbing an officer in the process of inquisition or making an arrest, which essentially means resisting arrest. He was booked and he spent a couple of days in jail.
That was Tom Hayden in 1961. I want to go back to the Pacifica Radio archive. Again, this is Tom Hayden in the early 60s, 1961. Tom, you're helping the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Durham, North Carolina. In this clip, you continue to talk about the importance of voter registration.
For a series of reasons, the individuals in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee have come to see voter registration as the kind of issue and the kind of goal that now is not only possible but also very desirable in many areas of the South, and the sort of thing that can complement a program of nonviolent direct action.
That's Tom Hayden. Thanks to the Pacifica Radio archive. We hear you 50 years ago. Voter rights is a key issue even today, even close to 50 years after the signing of the Voting Rights Act, with voter ID laws being passed around the country that are cutting back on people's ability to vote.
Exactly. Well, the movement began with sit-ins, which were occupations of lunch counters. I was a freedom rider. I occupied a train from Atlanta to Albany, Georgia. But very swiftly, the organizers kept hearing from particularly elderly people, black people in the South, I want to vote before I die. I served in Korea. I want just once to be able to vote. And the principle was to help people accomplish what they already wanted to do, and there was a strategy also because the disenfranchisement of all these people was the power foundation on which the Dixiecrats, the white racist wing of the Democratic Party that dominated all the committees, was based upon. And so it was not an accident that these projects occurred in Macomb, Mississippi, or in Lowndes County, Alabama, or Albany, Georgia, and they weren't. It wasn't an either-or of direct action or voter registration, because the vote was a real threat to the status quo. And SNCC people made virtually a blood oath to spend at least 5 years. Nobody knew who would live and who would not, but to attack this problem. And it took great courage, but also strategic intelligence, listening to people who'd been waiting for all these years. And it resulted in the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which fortunately had some teeth. That's why the right wing is complaining today, and the Confederate states are complaining because they're still under a monitoring provision of the 1965 Act. So, in a sense, SNCC accomplished that. I remember I was at a SNCC reunion, 50th last year before, and the Attorney General of the United States, Holder, was there, and he gave a talk, and he said, you know, there's a straight line between those projects in the Deep South and where I sit today at the Department of Justice, and I owe it to SNCC.